We are talking about the EcoFriends bird feeder kit, 3 styles of different upcycled bird feeders with myself, Amanda, and Benjamin is here with me as well. And so we do, this is EcoFriends, which is a new series of virtual presentations that we're going to be doing one each season. We using readily available materials that are repurposed into new useful objects. We lead you through the items that are provided in your kit, but they're fairly easily and readily available materials that you can always save more of and use your own imagination to make more versions of. Our next one is in April, which will be transforming t-shirts into some different craft materials there. And in August, we'll be doing back to school with a repurpose. We also have some other upcoming take and make kits. We have egg dyeing naturally, which is a self-led kit in time for Easter. We'll be doing a really cool one, Be a Friend, build a native pollinator hotel that will have virtual instruction on May 14th. And then we'll have another self-led nature journaling kit available as well for June. So every month we have some type of virtual program. Then some of the things that we will have coming for in-person programming, we have a lot of bird ones. So coming up, we do have a kids crafting camp for younger crafters coming up here at Red Oaks Nature Center. Whose Nest is Best will be a program all about nests and eggs for families. And then we have Feather Fest here at Red Oaks as well. So we'll have some of our advanced birders in the morning that are a little quieter and might see a few different types of species. And then in the later morning, we'll be doing the beginning birders walk for maybe some of our younger and more enthusiastically voiced birders. And then we also have a migratory bird walk, again, with different sessions for the more advanced birders versus the younger crowd, usually at Wint Nature Center as well. All right. So the first birds that we're going to be talking about is going to be our hummingbirds. That's the first feeder that we're going to make. So we do have hummingbirds here in Michigan. You can see some pictures there. And Benjamin, do you want to take it away?
Yeah, sure. I mean, when you say we have some hummingbirds, we really just have one. We're not very lucky in terms of diversity for Michigan. We have the Ruby-Throated Hummingbird as our only native species. They are still just amazing that they fly as far north as they do, because most of these Ruby-Throated Hummingbirds are going to make the trip down across the Gulf of Mexico. Most of them do actually make that long trip across the Gulf, which is really, really, really hard to fathom, considering their size and their energy requirements. Once a hummingbird kind of laps up their sap and they get their first meal, they've got about 4 hours of fuel. And if they don't find fuel within another 4 hours, they're kind of kaput. So hummingbirds spend so much of their time seeking food that when they make that big trip over the Gulf, it just wipes them out. So not too many hummingbirds here. If you were to venture a little bit further west, Arizona is well known for their hummingbird population, and I've had the opportunity to head out there just once, but there's dozens of species in the United States, but again, just the one here. The image that I kind of threw in there on the left is just to kind of talk about how amazing that they are from the sense of coevolution with flowers. Obviously, hummingbirds are not just native to North America, We have them in South America, Central America. And we have some really unique species, kind of like the one that's depicted, which is the sword-bill hummingbird. And depending on the types of flowers that they feed on, depends on how long or curved their bill and their tongue will need to be. So many of these hummingbirds have adapted over thousands of years with these different flowers. And the image on the right, had to throw it in there. This is a ruby-throated hummingbird feeding her young. And it doesn't look like anything super tiny, right? But that nest, and you can kind of see it, that nest is composed of a lot of different things, which include lichen. They will pick the lichen off of the side of a tree, and they'll bring it back to their nest. And then you'll also notice there's a lot of spider webs in there. Hummingbirds love to weave spider webs into their design for its tensile strength. It's very strong, but it also gives. And if you saw a hummingbird egg in real life, it's about the equivalent of a tic tac. They are that small when they're laid, and the babies are about that big when they come out. But as you can see in this image, once they start to grow, that nest needs room to expand. And Mama here, she's got a couple of different babies in there. So hummingbirds are just pretty fascinating outside of what they're famous for, right? Their wings beating so fast that they can fly forwards and backwards and lots of different things. So the feeder that we're going to talk about today gives you that opportunity to see them in your own yard and learn a little bit more. There's so many different types of feeders out there for hummingbirds, including there's some out there where you can even about the size of a quarter and have just a little reservoir on them. And if you're a really patient person, you can kind of hold on to them during spring. Spring migration is really good, but even in the summer, and they'll fly right up to you and sip sap out of your little fake flower. I've seen so many different types now. So, but yeah, go ahead with the next slide.
So for this first one, we will need the following materials for your kit. You should have a little spool of wire, a glass bottle, a rubber stopper, and some copper tubing. If you choose to decorate, you may have something like little plastic pony beads or Sharpies. So for this one, what we would do, and we do have the recipe on the back of the sheet that you picked up for hummingbird food, which is basically boiling water and sugar and dissolving the sugar into the water in a 4 parts water to 1 part sugar ratio. So for this one, we're basically going to, you can use the Sharpie or glass marker if you have them in order to draw some little designs or make it as pretty as you want.
What kind of a bottle do you have there? Is that a dressing bottle?
This one is a San Pellegrino, actually.
Nice.
One of our attendants here at Red Oaks donated quite a few of them to our kit. And so if you are going to decorate something like a red or pink or orange color to kind of get the idea of flowers might help attract your hummingbirds. So if you just want to do a little bit of decorating.
Yeah, the color red is definitely an attractant for hummingbirds. You don't have to have red colored nectar. A lot of commercial products include red dye with them on the basis that it will help to attract them. But the science is really out on whether that has any negative effects. It doesn't have any positive effects on their system. So the red dye really is something that isn't necessary. And such as Amanda said, you know, having some red markings on there that works the same way, or even putting it your feeder near like a bush that you have, you know, any kind of colors will still attract them. But I would just generally say, yeah, don't worry, don't bother with the store-bought dyed hummingbird feeder. It really is so simple. Just the 4-to-1 ratio. You can very quickly boil it on your stove, let it cool down, and keep it in the fridge for a week, and they'll love it just the same.
Yeah, we don't want to take any chances with them. So then we just take the copper tubing and kind of press it into your rubber stopper. Kind of give it a good push. And then into the wider end. And then you would fill your bottle and just stopper it up. And then we can use our wire because hummingbirds aren't going to drink it from this. So we would just use our wire to wrap around the bottle and give us something to hang it from. And this is where you can put beads, or if you have any buttons that have a wide hole in them, a single hole, and you can try to just wrap your wire around and add the beads as you go. You can, of course, be as creative as you want. It's your hummingbird feeder. If you have your Sharpies and you wanted to try coloring the wires or doing anything like that, could be a little fun. And then you just kind of hook the wires in the back so that they cross. And then there's also a ribbon. I was going to add jute twine to this kit, but we had the ribbon left over from one of our other kits. And remember, this is all about repurposing and reusing what we have, right? And so you can just tie the ribbon around your wire. It makes kind of a little cage for your bottle. And then you could hang that on a shepherd's hook or a tree branch. Might take a little messing around with the wire though. Helps if I put it on the screen. So there is our hummingbird feeder. Do we have any questions about that? If you wanted to, if you're on mute and you'd like to chat, you can feel free to put questions in the chat box at any time. So then our next common backyard bird type was the woodpeckers. Right, we definitely have more than one kind of woodpecker here in Michigan.
Yeah, quite a few. The little guy depicted there, the little male hairy woodpecker. Got his little red head. And so of the woodpeckers that you would see most likely in your backyard in southeastern Michigan, The Downy Woodpecker is probably the number one, the Hairy Woodpecker probably number two, and they look very similar to one another. A lot of people have struggled to determine which one is which when they don't have them right next to each other. So I gave you an image that shows you what they look like right next to each other. The bird on the far left is our smaller species, which is the Downy Woodpecker, and that's a female. She doesn't have the red. And similarly, the one on the right is a female Hairy Woodpecker. So when they're side by side, it's quite easy to see the comparison that the Hairy Woodpecker is quite a bit larger. But the best way to determine that if you're not sure at your own feeder would be to look at the bill length. The bill of the Downy Woodpecker, it's only maybe about half the size of its head, whereas the bill on the Hairy Woodpecker maybe lifts a little bit more. It's pretty noticeable when you check them out and you're looking for the bill length to determine which species it is that you have, but guarantee you're going to get both species coming to the suet feeder that we're going to build with you tonight. And woodpeckers just generally, honestly, I've taught entire programs on woodpeckers. There's so many fascinating things about them. But the thing that always blows people's minds are their tongues. And so I put an image in here to show you that the woodpecker tongue is very unique in that it is forked. It splits just about halfway back, and it does actually come back and curve back around almost to the tip of their nose or the tip of their beak. And then they have that long tongue for obvious reasons. Whether they sip sap, they may have an adapted tongue for that, like our sapsuckers. And then we also have others, such as the northern flicker, which is an ant specialist. And so they have more barbs on their tongue so that when they're sticking their tongue down into either a tree or an ant hole in the ground, they're able to catch those ants and pull them out. So different woodpeckers have different tongue adaptations, but most species have such a long tongue that they have this adaptation for it to roll around the back of their head. Now, it also serves a secondary purpose. When we think about woodpecker headaches, you ever have a migraine and you're like, oh man, I don't know how those woodpeckers do it. Well, the tongue also serves a secondary purpose of helping to, when it's inside of the head, helping to kind of compact and condense the brain case. There's a lot of different things going on back there that help to stabilize them, because when they are hammering, they're several hundred times the force of gravity every single time that their bill is hitting the wood. And it's the kind of impact that if you or I were to try it once, we'd have a concussion. But woodpeckers have so many different adaptations to help them that it's no big deal. And you can actually see one of those adaptations, a couple of them, in the image on the left. You see that the woodpeckers brace themselves. That's why they have such stiff tail feathers. They basically use it like a third leg, and that's what helps to give them that extra oomph to be able to knock through their tree. But woodpeckers are also zygodactyl. It's a fun word. I love it. And it basically means that they have 2 feet forward, and I don't know how to do this. I wasn't prepared for this. 2 feet forward and 2 feet backward, so that they get really, really good grip no matter what they're doing. So woodpeckers, like I said, in general, are fascinating because of so many different reasons. But these are a couple of the species that you could see here. And go ahead and flip to that next slide. Can't recall. We have a couple more we can talk about. Oh yeah. You've probably seen all of these species in southeastern Michigan at one point or another. The individual over on the left is a yellow-shafted flicker, and I just mentioned earlier that they're an ant specialist. So you will find them on trees like a normal woodpecker. However, you will also find them in the middle of the prairie and just on the path. Many times I found yellow-shafted flicker feathers where I did not expect them. And that's because they have different varied feeding routines. Something interesting about the yellow-shafted flicker, that is the subspecies that we have here on, let's just say, the East Coast. Into the West Coast, they have a red-shafted variant. They are still the same species, so they can interbreed. And there have been documented cases kind of along the Rocky Mountain range where the two species collide and interbreed, where they're actually orange shafted flickers, which is pretty cool. And that harks back just to their name harks back to quite literally the shaft of their feathers is completely colored. It's a very unique thing in the bird world. The bird we have in the middle is the Pileated Woodpecker. Pileated Woodpecker is about the size of crow, and they are our largest living woodpecker in the United States. There was one woodpecker species which was a little bit larger than them, and you may have heard of them. They were the Ivory-Billed Woodpeckers, and they were famous for being down in the like the Louisiana swamps, some of the most inhospitable habitat for human beings that we could imagine. But yet, of course, we found a way to harm their populations and their habitat enough that we've unfortunately lost them. There have been several searches in different countries for any remaining individuals of the ivory-billed species, and they haven't really turned up too much success. But again, we do have the pileated woodpecker, and they are still so fascinating to see, to hear. Sometimes you'll be walking in the woods and you'll just see a giant pile of wood chips at the base of a tree. And I hope that you get that opportunity to see it and look up, because there's probably been a couple of different woodpeckers going to town. And then last but not least, the woodpecker that we have on the right side, that is the red-bellied woodpecker. And you can kind of actually see, you picked a really good picture, Amanda. You can see a little bit of the red belly feathers, a little bit lower, more towards the vent of the bird. And, leave it to ornithologists to make things a little more complicated than they need to be. But, we already have a red-headed woodpecker, which has a complete red head from what we would consider like the throat up. And so we couldn't name this guy the red-headed woodpecker, and they went for the red belly feathers. But another very, very common bird in our area, and also the mascot for the Wint Nature Center. Hey.
Yes, I've seen several of them at Wint, even today. So for this next feeder, we're going to be using, Benjamin, did you want to talk about the little guy in the bottom there?
I sure can, yeah. The little guy on the bottom is a nuthatch. In particular, it's a white-breasted nuthatch. We do have two species in Michigan. The red-breasted nuthatch kind of comes in more towards the wintertime, a little bit smaller, a little bit more red by its name. But nuthatches are really interesting. Their behavior is to forage, and they most often will forage up a tree. When I say up a tree, it's their preferred route. They will start usually at the base of the tree and work their way up, going around it. We only have a handful of species that are really gleaners that like to glean from the bark like they do. And the other one, which we don't have a picture of today, but you can definitely look it up, would be the brown creeper. Brown creeper, it's not a woodpecker, it's a songbird, but they have an opposite behavior, whereas they like to go down the tree. So if you see two birds crossing paths, one going down and one going up, you probably have a better indication of which one you're looking at. But they will most definitely come to your suet feeders that we'll be making tonight. Just the same as the bird up at the top there that we just talked about, that one. That is the red-bellied female.
So for this one, we'll be using the log part that was an accompaniment to the bag of your kit. Our miracle meal ingredients, which will be in some type of container that says miracle meal in Sharpie. We'll be using our sunflower seed packet, and we'll be using our toilet paper roll or paper towel tube as well, and the eye hook here as well. So for this one, really complicated. We're going to start by just kind of screwing in Just picking an end to make the top. And when we say that these are, recycled materials, these ones are actually, some of them are recycled Christmas trees you may have, or pieces of trees that have fallen here at Red Oaks Nature Center. So you can't get more sustainable than that, right?
For sure, for sure. Yeah, and these make tremendous bird feeders. Like obviously they're made for woodpeckers and clingers, but even just from that sense, they're just such a good design. It'll help to prevent any birds which you may consider undesirable at your feeders. Not like I'm not pointing my finger at the house sparrows or potentially European starlings, things like that. If you wanted, even once your feeder is made, the miracle meal that we're provided in the recipe that we provided is a fantastic recipe. Highly encourage it. But you could also go the traditional route. You could reach out to your local butcher and see if they have any actual beef fat that they would be willing to part with. Not sure how that works. I haven't really tried it myself, but suet in its most basic form really is just that rendered down beef fat. And it's got so much energy in it that it really does make a difference for these birds in the wintertime. It's a little bit of human intervention, but it's also so necessary for so many of our species. We give consideration to the black cat chickadee. They're in a very similar position to the hummingbirds, whereas their metabolism, they're such small birds, they weigh so little that they burn through most of their metabolism the first meal of the day within just the next few hours. So on a cold winter night, most of these little birds could shiver away all of their energy just trying to stay warm, and being able to provide this high quality beef fat and or I think we're using shortening and then the cornmeal. Being able to provide that raw energy is just critical in the wintertime, and it's helped keep a lot of those birds around a little bit longer than they may have. But when they're not feeding here, you'll find them out feeding on wild plants. If you have any native plants growing in your yard, a lot of them, it's really great to leave them up all year long. That's kind of maybe even like the additional bird feeder that we're not teaching you how to make tonight. But like I said, leaving some of those plants up in your yard, if they're native, can be really helpful. A lot of them, one species in particular that comes to mind are the goldenrods. If you have any goldenrods in your yard, maybe even inspect them for little balls. And a lot of times you'll find them along the stem of the plant. There'll be a small ball, and it's actually a gall. Now I'm getting all my words mixed up here. It's a gall that looks like a ball, and it's made by a small little insect that will actually lay its egg into the stem of the plant. And then as that egg is developing, it causes a reaction within the plant to swell and grow around it, which basically encases it. And if you find a plant like that with a little tiny hole in it, most likely that little larva has already emerged. However, a lot of them will spend their entire winter in that state, inside of a gall, inside of a plant. And our native birds are experts at locating them and chipping them out. So even in the middle of winter, you'll find, like I said, black cat chickadees and finches out and about, still finding those native food sources. If you have any of those plants growing around your yard, give consideration to maybe leaving them up throughout the winter.
And then what we would do is we have our miracle meal ingredients inside the container. I'm just taking the stick from the kit that we're actually going to be using as a perch in a different bird feeder, the last one. And I'm just using that to mix it all together.
yeah, using your hands is it's not necessarily discouraged, but your hands will smell like shortening for days. They'll be soft though. And a lot of times you can make this miracle meal ahead of time and you can refrigerate it. It lasts a bit longer than hummingbird feeder would. That hummingbird nectar was really, it's kind of a week thing. Make it once during the week, use it up, and then make a new batch the next week. If it's not refrigerated, hummingbird nectar, just the sugar and water, it can go bad, and that can make them sick. So it's a good idea with the hummingbird feeders and any feeder. Pay attention to them, clean them out, once a week. If you really can't do that, once every other week, and just make sure that you're using as fresh food as you can, so that you keep them good and healthy.
Right. So then once you've got it mixed, you can just kind of scoop and fill in the holes. Doesn't that look delicious?
Yeah, oh yeah, it does. You can add in different types of seed, whatever your preference, really. Do we have any seeds?
Yeah, we've got we've got some sunflower seeds for this one as well. So you can kind of put a couple of those in. I've also used things in the past, like I have a hedgehog at home and I had some freeze-dried mealworms and freeze-dried crickets to train him how to eat bugs. So I've put those inside as well.
Wow, that would have been a happy bird to discover that. That's awesome.
So you definitely can. At the bird seed store, you can find things like freeze-dried bugs, or at the pet store. And they make happy little additions as well.
Mm-hmm.
And be kind of creative about it.
Blackwell sunflower seed is an all-around great source versus a lot of other seeds that you can purchase. If you buy more of the mixed seeds, oftentimes you'll get seeds that just aren't native, things that birds don't necessarily like. And then we find that we have those situations where house sparrows and other birds will sit at the feeder and they do that raking with their beak, where they splatter all that hard-earned money of yours all over the ground for the squirrels to eat later on. But one good way to avoid that is to make sure that you're giving high quality seed, and Blackwell sunflower certainly meets that standard.
Hi there, I have a question.
Go ahead, Tracy.
And I may have missed it, but the mixture that she's using to fill those holes on the wood feeder, can you not mix the seed in with that?
Sure, you absolutely can. I was just being a little extra.
Yeah, you can definitely, and like I said, you can do type of seed. When we make it here at the Nature Center, we most often make about a gallon batch because we go through quite a bit of it, and we'll mix that seed in usually right off the get-go, so that you can have it all mixed in together. Yeah.
So we can repurpose the wood feeder when they eat everything out of it, then just do this process again.
Oh,
absolutely.
Yeah. Yep. That's what's so beautiful about it is, and if you decided, hey, I made it with sunflower seed and it didn't work out, try something different. Most certainly.
Right. And will that attract the blue jays, or is it the cardinals, like the sunflower seeds? I think it's the cardinals.
Well, those birds do. They most certainly will be attracted to black-browed sunflower seed. But in the instance of this feeder, it's going to depend on where you mount it. If a blue jay is able to land on it, blue jay will try to. But being that it is, a wood log, it really does benefit the clingers a lot more. So like I said, the chickadees can cling, the nuthatches, the woodpeckers. Some of the finches are pretty smart, so you probably wouldn't doubt that you'll see some goldfinches even trying to eat out of there. But you'll find that larger birds will probably struggle, those that can't cling.
So for our extra bonus, using up the little bit extra here feeder, then we're just going to take some of the miracle meal and kind of smear it on our cardboard tube. This is the point where if you kind of eyeball how much miracle meal you have versus how much tube you have, if you choose to go this route. And this is just a really easy, quick, not one that you would necessarily reuse, but if you just wanted to throw something out there, maybe while you're cleaning your log up or something like that, and you just wanted to throw up a little tiny extra bird feeder. If you're trying to get extra feeders in for your backyard bird count.
Yeah, well, that's coming up. It is prime time to be a fan of birds. I'm sure you probably have all heard them. I heard my first red-winged blackbird the other day. That's always a positive indicator that spring is on its way. No warbler sightings just yet, but I would bet that in the next couple of weeks, if the weather keeps shifting warm as it is, we're probably going to see them before May even. But you'll notice that we do have a couple of those birding programs coming up. And if any of those meet your fancy, as we were mentioning, the morning sessions, we do kind of have them labeled as more of an advanced. If you consider yourself a decent backyard birder, I think that you're more than welcome. One thing that we were hopeful to avoid with that earlier morning session, one, it's a little rougher on children to wake up such early hour, but it's also prime time. That's when the birds are most active, and also when a lot of birders are active. So if you wanted to come out for either session, I would definitely recommend that. Down here at Red Oaks, every year we have just an amazing assortment of warblers. I've had opportunities and occurrences where you literally leave the front door of the nature center, and by the time that you hit the sidewalk, you've probably already seen 5 or 6 different species of warblers. And we do keep a good track of them here to try to determine which species that we've had. So we get some rare ones. Warblers are really a fun one when they come up because they're bright colors. They're beautiful songs. But obviously, we're excited for all the birds to be back.
And I just kind of rolled the miracle meal in there, and you could put this just right over a tree branch, whatever could support it, and have a tasty little bird snack.
Yeah, that is awesome. If you didn't have, well, I'm sure you probably all have a toilet paper tube sitting around your home, but another alternative to this concept would be even to go out and find a pine cone and do the same thing that Amanda just did. Roll that pine cone in some of that cornstarch or shortening or other miracle meal ingredient, and just roll it in some seed and hang it up on your bird feeder. It's a great one.
I have a question. Is there a temperature, limit for the shortening as far as, you're supposed to usually use it, when it's more than no higher than the 70s, or what do you guys usually recommend?
Yeah, there definitely is. The word is a little bit out, but it's about 50 degrees actually.
Okay.
Anything above 50 degrees, 2 things happen. The miracle meal will go bad sooner. And also anything above 50 degrees, the birds really are at that point able to find other food sources. And it's not like it's bad for them to feed them this food in the summertime, but being that it's more complex fats, it really is more of a wintertime kind of a food. So I would suggest, like I said, probably keep it about 50 degrees as your mark. And once our days are solidly above 50 degrees, not too many of these birds are really going to have a need for that food versus another feeder that you might put out.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
Yeah, of course. It's one grumpy looking robin.
Is obviously one that does not migrate. He's been here all winter.
You would never know it by their name. Do you happen to know their Latin name offhand, Amanda?
I don't.
They are, it's a great name. They are Turdus migratorius. Yeah, they have it right in their name, but they have certainly found ways to adapt and stick around Michigan all year long.
I guess every species has its rebels, huh?
Yeah. American robin, obviously our state bird here in Michigan. State bird of a couple other states as well. Just similarly, the cardinal is a state bird in like so many states. It's crazy. And a funny story, I was actually in Hawaii a number of years ago, and I was reading one of the real nice boards that the local nature center had put up, and they referred to the cardinal as the Kentucky Cardinal. And I almost had tears in my eyes. I just couldn't believe it. Never seen it ever referred to specifically as the Kentucky Cardinal and not the Northern Cardinal. But, depends on where you are. Like I said, a lot of different states have laid claim to these awesome birds already.
Our last feeder is going to be just kind of the big clump of songbirds, which this kind of encompasses most of the other birds. They're just not hummingbirds and not woodpeckers, right? Not climbers.
Yeah. Yeah, and you've got a good array here. Speaking of that Kentucky Cardinal, we have a beautiful male northern cardinal over on the left side, differentiated from the female by the female having that gorgeous yellow and orange in her feathers. In the top right, we have another summer migrant who we get to observe. It's one of the grosbeak species. It would be the rose-breasted grosbeak. And this is the female. So she looks a little bit more drab. She looks like she could be an overgrown robin, except for that beak. They are adapted for eating larger seeds. And as you can just tell by looking at it and the chunkiness of her lower bill, they're very good at doing that. And then down on the bottom, we have a couple different birds. I'm actually not quite sure who the one on the right is. I can't quite tell. But the one directly in front of us is our classic black Cat Chickadee. Chickadees are amazing for so many reasons. And kind of as we mentioned, they will do two things. And it's kind of funny, the picture you chose actually, Amanda, because he's clung to the side of a suet feeder. That would be a traditional cake feeder, the wires that he's hanging on. But they are small enough that they can cling on bark and enjoy your suet feeder. But they will also most certainly take advantage of the seed hopper that we're going to create tonight. Let's see, who else do we have? That doesn't look like a bird.
That's definitely someone who's going to eat at your bird feeders, though.
Yeah. And then maybe now it is a good time to talk about the height requirement, Amanda. Just maybe partially because of him.
Right. So the DNR is advising that if you feed birds, we keep them, the feeder should hang at least 6 feet off of the ground in order to keep from the spreading chronic wasting disease in deer, because sometimes not just birds eat at your bird feeders. And so that is an important consideration as well.
Yeah, and also just kind of pay attention to the surrounding area. If you can put it in such a spot that there's going to be a few feet away from any other structures in general, that will help you tremendously in subduing the squirrel population, as well as other critters who would love to get up there and have a taste of what you're putting out. He does look comfortable, though. I give him that.
Okay, so then for our final feeder of the night, we have our Songbird feeder. We'll be using our plastic bottle, the stick that we used, the Chanel stem, and our bird seed. That didn't make the list. And so for this one, it's a really nice, easy one. You can, if you had a few of those beads or buttons or something around, you can use those as well. This one I really like. I really like swirls. The Sharpies work really well on the plastic bottles to make some little designs, just to make it a little bit more your own. And then you can take your lid off of your plastic water bottle. And definitely, I mean, some of these things, like when you're done with your the wood bird feeder, you can replace it easily every year, right? Because there's always wooden branches around. So so at the end of the feeding season, there's no problem with getting another one. It's very important to clean your bird feeders. I know we've mentioned it before, but just so we're not spreading any kind of disease from bird to bird, as well as from deer to bird or deer to deer. So I must have picked the worst kit. So there's two little holes at the top of the plastic bottle. These we just put, we used a hole punch. Yes, it will go through the plastic bottle. And you can just thread your stem through there. Your holes may be actually in the screw on part, or right below the screw on part as well. That tends to be just a little prettier if you can get your holes there. Depends on what type of water bottle you have. And then again, if you want to put some little beads on and make it pretty, if you have those available. Sorry, I didn't think about that idea until after I already put all the kits together. And then you would just make this again, just loop it over itself, and twist it, and you'd be able to hang through there. And then we take our stick, and there's also another little hole down at the bottom. And then there's a little X cut through the back that we can push it back out, just to give it a little extra stability. And that'll be your perch for the bird. And then it's a seed hopper. So you're going to be aware of where the little window is when filling it. And if you're more comfortable filling it from the little window, so you know that that's where it is, you can certainly feed it there through there to fill it up. Or if you want to try going through the top.
Yeah, and a traditional seed hopper such as this will attract a much greater variety of birds. We won't find that birds are limited to just clinging or climbing. Pretty much anybody will try to land on this. I wouldn't even put it past a blue jay to give it a whirl. So depending on the kinds of birds that you're trying to attract, the seed hopper will most certainly bring you the greatest variety. It's just more of a question of what type of birds do you really want to see. We haven't really discussed thistle feeders this evening. There's so many different types of those out there. There's your traditional thistle feeder, and then there's also upside down thistle feeders. I prefer those because certain birds cannot clean upside down. Our native American goldfinches, which we should also be seeing them again pretty soon. They should be on their way back. They are experts at cleaning upside down and eating. So, if you find that you live in a pretty urban area, and one of your greatest vexes are house sparrows, who just like I said, they have that typical behavior where they'll look for the food that they want, and they'll rake all the rest of it out with their beak. It's quite disturbing if you're the one who's paying for all that seed. So, that would be maybe another option for you. You could look at a different type of feeder, which prohibits birds such as house sparrows from using them. So this looks delicious. I'm hungry just looking at it. And you probably also, at the same time as your, I believe this is safflower seed. Is that correct, Amanda?
Pardon me?
Is this safflower seed that you've got?
Yes. So this is the seed that we had. We just had a whole bunch of it donated to the Nature Center. So it's a good seed. It was donated because the bag had split open at the store. So this is what they had a whole bunch of.
Yeah, and safflower seed, it's a good seed for all around birds. Some of the larger birds aren't fans of it, such as European starling, blackbirds, and grackles. But those are also birds, starlings and grackles and blackbirds, that tend to be a little bit more aggressive at bird feeders, kind of along the lines of even with blue jays. Blue jays can get quite aggressive when they find something they like. If any of you have ever had peanut feeders, I've tried it myself, and blue jays will run you. You have to work overtime just to put the peanuts in there for them. They love them so much, they'll drain it in a day. But again, it really comes back to what kind of birds do you want to attract, to what type of feeder you have, and then also what type of seed that you're putting in.
Did just want to end if anyone has any questions. If not, I'm going to add a link in the chat for our online comment cards for our programs. We definitely will appreciate doing. We haven't done all that many virtual programs yet, so if you have constructive criticism, please let me know what I need to work on. If you just want to say that we did a great job, that's cool too.
Thank you. You guys did a great job.
Thank you so much.